Hello and welcome to this session on ISO 45001 2018 standard, which is an occupational health and safety management system standard. In this session we are going to discuss about some popular misconceptions and myths about the standard itself, something related to health and safety management system, and the main clauses and way forward for your company certification as well as for the certification of yourself, and way forward for further learning. Because it's an awareness session, it will be a short session. It cannot cover all the details, but we will obviously go through each detail up to what extent we can. Okay, so I like to see the visitors on the session. I like to see them responding if they can hear me clearly. So let's move forward on the next slide and discuss about something about the company and the presenter. So a little introduction about the company. That the company Exoexcellence Consultants was created to cater the intellectual gap in the market and to tailor solutions as per the client's need. And we are helping companies in the compliance and trainings of following different programs like ISO 9001, which is a quality management system, ISO 14001, which is an environmental management system, ISO 45001, which is occupational health and safety management system, and ISO 50001, which is energy management system standard, and other management system standard. We are also capturing that as well. Okay, a little introduction about myself. I am a QHSE professional of around 10 years of experience. I have worked in QA, QMS, EMS, OHSMS, Lean, ENMS, IMS, etc. I have some international associations as well, like with medical device community, TSQNE, advisor, etc. I am a RICAS CQI lead auditor and also IOSH managing safely professional. So coming towards the slide regarding some misconceptions about the standard. So what are the common misconceptions that prevail regarding the standard? So here is the list of those common misconceptions that are there. Like people say ISO certifies companies for ISO 45001, or going towards ISO 45001 certification will revolutionize the company's performance in health and safety, and there will be no zero unsafe acts. There will be zero unsafe acts and conditions. There will be no unsafe act, you can say, or no unsafe conditions. Or people say ISO 45000 is related to hazardous organizations only. And people say that ISO 45001 is not needed if company is legally compliant in occupational health and safety. So if you can hear me properly, please respond. Thank you. And again, people say that implementation of ISO 45001 is very costly and there is no return of investment. So we go and discuss this one by one to demystify the concepts here. Actually, ISO, for the first point, ISO is not a certification body. ISO is a standards development body. It produces a standard. The role of certification is related to certification bodies like BSI Global, like TUV. They actually certify organizations. It's not ISO who certify the companies for ISO 45001. Then we have people saying that the implementation or certification of ISO 45001 will lead company to zero unsafe acts and conditions. So it's also not true, since ISO 45001 is a management system standard and it talks about continual improvement. You can say that after religiously implementing the standard ISO 45001, you can avoid fatal incidents, you can avoid major accidents, but you cannot absolutely remove all unsafe conditions, or you can absolutely counter your employees to play safely 100%. It's not possible. So it's a gradual process actually. Then people say that ISO 45001 is only for hazardous organization. Well, it's not true, since ISO 45001 can be applied in any organization, but for people, the organizations are hazardous, like the chemical organizations, or the organization in which they are having physical loads of tonnage, etc. These are the hazardous organizations, and for offices it's okay not to go with ISO 45001. So actually it's not true, because you can see in offices as well, we have slipping hazards, we have falling hazards, we have different types of issues in offices as well, like wet floor, like people working, changing the illumination box, working at some height, so they can also fall, and we have cases globally that are being reported, that are being reported in the offices as well. So ISO 45001 is also applicable, in a non-hazardous organization as well, where there is just office work. Then people say ISO 45001 is not needed if company is legally compliant in occupational health and safety. Well, actually it's not true, since the legal compliance is does not give you a structure to manage the health and safety performance. You require a management system to manage that performance. So complying with legal labor laws or things like that regarding health and safety did not ensure you have a management system in place that can help you review your performance and improve. Then we have people saying that implementation of ISO 45001 is too costly, is way too costly, and there is no return of investment on that. So obviously you have heard that the insurance companies charge higher premium for organizations when they have frequent accidents. So what will you pay for the rest of your life is way beyond if you implement ISO 45001 and reduce your incidents in the company. So it's better to have the implementation, and other cost is also there. When you have an injured employee, you have lost time injuries, as well as there are various other damages as well on the psychology of other persons working in that vicinity. So you need ISO 45001. Okay, moving forward, why is the management system needed for health and safety in first place? So I am going to discuss some statistics of ILO, International Labour Organization, regarding health and safety incidents in 2017. Around 2.78 million fatal accidents occur at work in the year 2017. 2.78 million, it's a very high figure. And this is the fatal accidents at work only. This does not include household accidents or accidents on roads, etc. Okay, and if we go down and break this number, on each day it is 7,700 persons. As an average, they die daily due to workplace injuries or diseases. Then we have other 374 million non-fatal injuries and illness occurring every year. So this is a very high number, and this is a very sorry figure for the global world, where companies are hiring people but cannot ensure their health and safety on the workplace. So let's discuss why companies need the health and safety management system, and why they need to ensure the safety and well-being of the employees. So there are three major reasons for that. One is the moral reason, since it is the right of every employee when he or she has joined the company in a healthy state, so he or she should go back home with that same healthy and well-being state. There is another legal aspect of it, and the legal aspect counts on the reality that if an accident occur, the employee, labor union, or any other relevant stakeholder, for instance the family of that employee, can pose a lawsuit or legal challenge for that company, and the resolution for those claims are well in millions if there is a fatality or there is a major disability, etc. So the legal challenge is also there, and the bad name it brings for the company is also worrisome for companies. Then we have the financial reason. One of the financial reason is that insurance premium increases in case of frequent recoveries arising from accidents. But you have to facilitate that employee. The companies need to have their health care, although it is insured, but then again the insurance premium increases. In case of fatality or major injury, you have a breakdown at your workplace, that employee is not working anymore, and you have lost time injuries as well. So basically there are three reasons that employers must provide a safe and healthy workplace, and these are the moral, legal, and financial. Then discussing the intent of ISO 45001 standard. The intent is very simple, that is to protect the employees and visitors from work-related accidents and diseases. Secondly, to make the companies compliant to health and safety regulations and labor laws. So this is the intent of the standard, and this is very simple. Going forward, why ISO 45001 is published? We have other occupational health and safety standards like OSHA's 18001 and others, regulations and country-based standards as well. Why we need ISO 45001? Because there was no international standards published before that, before ISO 45001. Only OSHA's 18001 and some other country-specific standards were used. There was no common frame of work which companies can adopt and which is acceptable everywhere. So there was a need for international management system standard for the occupational health and safety management system. The OSHA's 18001 was last published in the year 2007. Again, we discussed in the previous online session that ISO 9001 is based on the common structure. Now we have ISO 45001 as well on that same structure to help companies to easily integrate. This is the structure of ISO 45001. It has the scope, normative references, terms and definitions, context of organization, leadership, planning, support, operation, performance evaluation, and improvement. Now again, scope is regarding the standards scope of applicability. Normative references are there for references of standards like ISO 9001, since this standard uses the same philosophy of management system as of ISO 9001. Then we have terms and definitions. There are various terms and definitions in this standard for health and safety management systems, and this include terminologies like incidents, worker, definition of worker, like participation, consultation, contractor, like legal requirements and other requirements, and various other definitions are there. Then we have the context of the organization. The requirements of context of the organization are up to much extent similar to that of ISO 9001, but in this case the context is different. The context is related to health and safety management system, and in this context we can have other interested parties as well. We discussed interested parties in our previous session. Interested parties are those parties that seems to be affected by organizational activities, or they can be affected, or they are affected, or they think they can be affected. So here in this case of health and safety management system, the parties that are affected from the health and safety management system are your visitors, are your employees, are the insurance companies who offer you insurance for products and for your employees, medical insurance and other insurance, and the regulatory bodies which have labor laws that cover some aspect of health and safety, and other related parties like families of employees, etc. So these are the interested parties here, and again internal and external issues are the same. We will discuss it in the later slides. Okay. Then we have leadership role, and there is a slight difference between the leadership role as in ISO 9001 and in this standard, because the leadership role is not only related to developing policies and focusing on developing the occupational health and safety management system, but the leadership role is also there for worker participation, because you cannot run occupational health and safety management system on your own. You need the involvement of those people that are working for your organization. So you need worker participation within it. And obviously you have to develop the policies which should be available as documented information and which should be communicated within the organization, as well as it should be available to the interested parties. Then the role of leadership is also there to define the roles and responsibilities and authorities for the occupational health and safety management system. And the worker participation is related to the consultation and participation of workers. So organization or the leadership has to focus that there is some framework for the participation of workers. The opinions of workers are included in the improvement or development of occupational health and safety management system, and there is some way for the consultation as well in designing the policy, as well as the need and expectations of interested parties and in other areas of the company. So this is a slight difference with the ISO 9001 here. Then we have planning. Planning is related to addressing risk and opportunities identified in the issues and issues in context of the organization, as well as the risk and opportunities related to business processes, the legal requirements, and the other thing here is the opportunities for the health and safety management system. Now the difference between the OSHA's 18001, the British OSHA's 18001 standard with this ISO 45001 standard is that it talks about risk and opportunities, whereas the OSHA's 18001 is only focused on risk. And the other thing is that ISO 45001 is also focused on the organizational risk as well. Not only the operational hazard identification or risk assessment. Okay, so ISO 45001 covers that as well, but in addition to that, it also covers business risk regarding health and safety management system. Then we have the support function. Support function is this is almost the same as we have in ISO 9001. It includes documented information, competence requirement, resource requirement, awareness, communication. Of course, the application is different since in case of an incident, you need to define all communication channel for internal communication as well as external communication, who will be facing the media, who will be talking to regulatory bodies, etc., etc. All these things needs to be defined in the communication part of the support functions. Then we have the operation part. Operation part is focused on health and safety operations, and the operation part includes things like operational management, the control related to health and safety, and the purchasing for companies also needs to be covered in the operation part. Then we have the emergency preparedness and response. Like in the case of coronavirus, there should be an emergency response for the health and safety management system. So how the organization will respond if there is a challenge for health and safety, like the emergency we have for the coronavirus. So these are the things covered in operation planning and control. You actually eliminate hazard or reduce the occupational health and safety risk. One more important thing here is in the operations is the management of change. You see, whenever there is a change, for instance, a competent worker was working on a machine and he left the job. You hired another person who does not know how to operate that machine. It is a risky thing to get that employee directly on the job, because that will pose a risk for himself as well as for the surrounding people within that vicinity, because due to his incompetence or not knowing the reality of that particular location, there is now an increased risk. So for that reason, a standard has included a clause for management of change within clause 8. Then we have the performance evaluation, which is almost the same, but another thing we have is the in the performance evaluation is the evaluation of compliance. Now this evaluation of compliance is all related to the compliance of the legal and regulatory bodies, as well as any other requirement which company has subscribed. So for instance, company is a supplier for big MNC, and that MNC has some specific requirements for health and safety. So you need to evaluate that compliance for that MNC requirements as well. And for instance, we have a company which is a part of a group of companies, and that group of companies has some specific requirements for health and safety. Then again, the company needs to assess all those requirements and evaluate its compliance against those group company requirements, in addition to the legal and regulatory legislation, etc. requirements for the health and safety. Then we have the clause regarding the improvement. Improvement clause talks about incidents, non-conformity and corrective action, and the continual improvement. So this is just a brief introduction about the standard structure. This is the same structure as of ISO 9001 2015, but the application areas are totally different. If you go in details, these are totally different things. When you go in detail and draft every requirement, draft documents for every requirement. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. Obviously, as I told you that it is a common structure. So we have in ISO 9001 the same structure, ISO 14001 which is the environmental management system. We have the same structure, and in ISO 45001 as well we have the same HLS structure. Moving forward, what are the major changes in OSHA's 18001 versus the ISO 45001? Because why we are discussing OSHA's 18001 here? Because ISO does not have any standard for health and safety before this ISO 45001, and the most popular standard for health and safety was OSHA's 18001. So we are discussing it for that reason, to compare any existing framework with ISO 45001. So what are the major changes? Context of organization is a new requirement which was not there in OSHA's 18001. How we define context of organization? By identifying external and internal issues, identifying external and internal parties and their needs and expectations, documenting those needs and expectations and external and internal issues, and have some system for periodic review and monitoring for those issues and needs and expectation of interested parties. So this is how we determine context of the organization. Obviously the scope is also covered within it. Again, we have some graphic illustration regarding the external and internal context. Here the internal context is related to the employees and the external context is related to insurance companies, and we can add on. Then we also have a requirement of process approach in ISO 45001 as well, as it was there in ISO 9001 2015 as well. So we have to consider health and safety as well as a process, since we will be managing incidents and we will be managing processes. So we have to adopt the process approach. We have to identify the inputs and how we are going to do the process, and with what tools and what resources we would be needing, and who will be doing it and how it will be done. All these things need to be clarified here. Since I told you that the standard also talks about process approach here as well in the ISO 45001 standard as well, okay, which was not that explicitly stated in OSHA's 18001. Then again, the preventive action in OSHA's 18001 was replaced with the risk-based approach here, since the risk-based approach covers the preventive action within it. And additionally, the ISO 45001 also talks about the business risk management activities related to health and safety. Then the documented information is replaces the procedures and records and manual, all these things as stated in OSHA's 18001. So we have no manual requirement now here in this standard. If you don't have a manual, it's okay to go with it. If the organization is smaller, it's okay to go with it. But as I told, that for bigger companies we recommend to have a health and safety manual for ISO 45001. Now what can you do to prepare for ISO 45001 standard? What can be done? First of all, you need to determine the scope of the certification program. Then you have to conduct a gap analysis regarding the current situation and the future state based on the compliance of the ISO 45001 standard. Gap analysis is a document which lists all those requirements and analyzes the current situation, if it complies or not. If it is not compliant, then the observation is stated in the gap analysis report. If it is compliant, then what procedures and what organizational resources are there to comply with that is stated on the gap analysis report. Based on the gap analysis report, you have an action plan. An action plan is managed through a project and once the implementation project is done, you can go for contacting the certification body for the stage 1 audit, which is a readiness review audit, and then the stage 2 audit, which is an implementation audit for the company. And after the stage 2 audit, you are awarded a certificate of compliance with ISO 45001. The certificate is valid for 3 years, but as soon as the year passes, you have to go to surveillance audit. For the ISO 45001 standard, the surveillance audit is done to verify that you maintain your compliance with the ISO 45001 standard. And once the cycle of 3 years is completed, after the stage 1, stage 2 and 2 subsequent surveillance audit, you are required to go to the recertification audit for the ISO 45001 standard. Now, discussing some things regarding the actual accident, regarding the health and safety, and the major purpose of this standard is to reduce the incidents and make company compliant to zero accident. It is important for us to understand why these accidents happen in the first place. So here we have a cheese model presented for you, and it shows that in any organization we have some hazards, and there are some controls within that organizations to prevent that hazards. Now with the cheese model, you are explained that how does a hazard convert into an accident. It's because these controls fail in the first place. These controls were having some flaws or openings that could not prevent that hazard from happening. So this is an accident causation model, or you can say a cheese model. So here in this example, we can see that a hazard was there and people do some unsafe act, or there were some unsafe condition due to any reason, maybe due to maintenance activity, and then we have some administrative controls within that area, that no one was allowed to go there during that maintenance activity, but people violated those administrative controls as well. Then we have some engineering controls. For instance, the machine was having a safeguard and the maintenance people were working on it by removing it, so the engineering control was also gone off. Then during the maintenance activity, one of the part came out of that area and hits a person coming towards the vicinity. So an accident took place. So we see that the levels of failures, that the person intervened within that vicinity, which is a no-go vicinity, it was an unsafe act, and the unsafe condition was the maintenance activity. The administrative controls were defined that nobody will enter the area where maintenance activity is going. Only maintenance personnel will be allowed. And then we have the engineering controls as well, that the safeguard was there, which was taken off. And after investigating all these things, we come to know that there was an effectiveness issue. The trainings for the health and safety activities, or you can say permit to work system, was not that effective, which leads to an accident. So there are multiple failures. You see the failure was at employee's end as well, who made an unsafe act. Unsafe condition was already there, whether they have adopted a permit to work or not, it can also be a failure. We have administrative controls. Administrative controls were also bypassed. The engineering controls were also bypassed, and it all means that the training for the health and safety management system was not that effective. So there are number of failures for an accident to happen, from the hazard that is present in the area to the accident. So this is the cheese model. and it helps people to investigate the root cause of an accident. So we have included it. It was a good model. We have included it in our health and safety session. Then we have some incident types defined in ISO 45001 standards. We are going to discuss that only. What are the incident types we have? So we have near miss incidents. Near miss incident is actually an occurrence of a happening or an event which triggers an health and safety issue. So there are two major types of incidents. One is the accident where some damage has occurred, and one is the near miss incident where the damage could have occurred but was prevented due to luck. So for instance, for the near miss example, there was some person working on height, and one of the tool falls off from that height, and there was a person standing nearby. So luckily that person misses the hit of that tool. So this will be a near miss incident. And for instance, if that tool struts at the head of that person and that person suddenly dies, that will be an accident, and it will be a fatal accident. Accidents has three different types. One is a fatal accident, one is ill health accident, and one is the injury accident. So we have three main different types of accident. So in this case, when the person dies, we say it's a fatal incident. For instance, if he got injured, if that tool hits his arm, he got injured, so we will say it a injury oriented accident. And we have instances that accidents can also lead to ill health in the longer run. So for instance, people are working near acid area or some other chemical area, and there was a leak of it, and it causes some internal damage within that employee that does not return a safety issue or an injury issue right there, but the health of that employee got affected. So health is affected in the longer run. So for instance, people working with lead chemical are actually have incidences of high exposure of lead can lead to ill health and not injury or fatality directly. So if you are exposed to higher exposure of that chemical, you may experience ill health and in some cases fatality as well. Okay. So can you hear me clearly? If you can respond, I'll be glad, because I don't have interactions right now. So if you can hear me clearly. Okay. So in case of a fire incident as well, we have a fire for instance, and if anyone got stuck in that fire and got burned, it is an injury accident. And if the fire took place and was scoped up, the incident happened and no property was damaged, no person was damaged, then we can say it's a near miss incident, because nobody was damaged from that thing, and the fire was erupted with the fire extinguishers right there. Okay. Okay, moving forward. So these are the incident types. One more categorization we can do here is related to the major accident or minor accident. So major accidents are those which are defined when we have a lost time injury. Minor accidents are those when we don't have a lost time injury. The person got hit, and it was not that bad. He recovered and come to work without any lost time injury. So if we have a LTI, lost time injury, we have a major accident, and if we don't have a lost time injury, we have a minor one. Going forward, well, this is the operation controls hierarchy. To actually control the hazards, the priority is given to elimination first, the first base of the pyramid. Then if we can substitute it, then we have engineering controls, and then we have the administrative controls, and the last control is PPEs. So for the coronavirus, for instance, if we can eliminate it right from the beginning by some, that will be the first option, but I guess we don't have any right now. If we can substitute it with some process, if the process is hazardous, obviously coronavirus is not that, it's not a process, it's a virus, it's a pandemic. But for instance, it was released because of some human practices or processes in the wet market. So if those processes can be substituted by some other alternative processes that do not have that hazard, this is the thing here. Then we have the engineering controls. If there are some sort of ventilations or some sort of automated system which can avoid the human interaction with that contagious thing, that will be one option. Then we have the administrative controls, that if the vicinity where there is the processes going on that can have the that thing, that hazard result, we apply some controls that nobody can enter it, or the work should be done by this and this and this manner. So the work instructions for that hazardous work, safe work instructions, will be the administrative controls. Then the last control we have is the personal protective equipments. It is the last control. As in the case of coronavirus, we have gloves and masks and goggles that are actually advised to have prevented from that. So this is the hierarchy of control, operation controls related to processes which will be adopted by an organization. Okay, so this was an important element, so I discussed it here. Now if you are compliant to OSHA's 18001 and you need to go to ISO 45001 certification, you have to perform a gap analysis. I already told you, which is illustration of the current system performance against the new requirements. So you need to do it. You need to list all the requirements of ISO 45001. You need to examine each requirement and your present situation, if you comply it or not. If you comply it, then by what tools you need to write it, then by what work instructions, by what procedures you need to write it. If you don't, you need to specify it, or if you partially comply, you need to write that as well. Then after the gap analysis, you have the action items in which you need to work. You need to make a project plan out of that, and you need to implement the project plan to get ISO 45001 implementation completed. Let's discuss another important aspect here, and it's related to plan, do, check, act cycle. As ISO 9001 was developed on the PDCA cycle, likewise ISO 45001 is also developed on the PDCA cycle. Okay, so what we have, are the elements of the PDCA cycle in the plan phase? This is the context of the organization, the process mapping, the risk assessment, the occupational health and safety objectives are all part of the plan phase. And the business risk assessment is also the part of the plan phase. Then we have the do part. Do part includes the communication, competence support, operation controls, emergency planning and preparedness, management of change, and procurement. Then we have the check part, which is the evaluation of compliance, management review, internal audits, performance evaluation is all under the check part. Then we have the act part. Act part is related to the correction of incidents, non-conformities, and then taking corrective actions on that, and then continually improving the health and safety management system. Then it goes again within the planning phase, and the cycle is repeated again and again for the continual improvement of the health and safety management system. So here is the point for you. The point how you can improve your learning about ISO 45001. How can you improve your learning, your competencies in ISO 45001? So we have something designed for you. It's a free online course on ISO 45001 that discusses various aspects of the standards in detail. Every single aspect of the standard is being discussed here in this online course. And this online course is a joint venture between Exoexcellence and Ellison online learning platform. It has a very small fee for certification. If you need a certificate for this online course, you can have it. It's a very small fee here. So this will be your starting point, because you don't have to pay anything for learning. You can learn the standard, and if you think that the learning experience was great, you can buy a certificate as well. And then you can also request us an on-site course regarding ISO 45001. The on-site course is a 2 days course normally, and in which we cover the standard elements, the details about the standard elements, how these elements are arranged, and what are the requirements of ISO 45000, and how we can manage it, how we can implement these requirements in an organization. This is a 2 days implementation session on ISO, short implementation session on ISO 45001. We will give you some tools, some practice activities in that, which would be done on site. In the given situation of coronavirus, we can also offer this course online live if there is a group of people requesting us for this course. Then we have an internal audit competency course on ISO 45001 standard, which is also delivered on site, and it is also a 2 days course, 2 full days course, and it has different audit. One half of the first day will be on standard, teaching about the standard and the activities related to it. The other half of the day will be spent in auditing. The second day will be related to the other elements of the standards that were not discussed in the first day, and some auditing the closure of the audit principles, and some activities for the auditing and assessment will be done in the second day of the ISO 45001 internal audit course, which is given on site, in an organization. Okay. Then we have a premium course which is a IRCA certified ISO 45001 lead auditor course. It is usually taught by a IRCA registered training body. It's a paid course, and it's a 5 days course normally, in which 2 days are specific for standard teaching, and 2 days for auditing, and 1 day is for assessment, preparing for the assessment of the ISO 45001 lead auditor exam. What we recommend here, we don't recommend any new beginner to go for the paid IRCA lead auditor course all at once, because it would be difficult for you. to understand the standard within this 5 days, and also the auditing competency as well. You need to take some awareness courses, some introductory courses like that the online course we have, or some 2 days sessions for the understanding the standard or the auditing principles. Then you can go to the lead auditing, the full-fledged course on lead auditing. Because many times people fail in the lead auditing exam because they could not understand the standard well within that 5 days session. Okay, now many training bodies are also offering these IRCA certified lead auditing courses in online, and they complete the curriculum in 7 days with a time shrinkage they have, and they invite you for 1 day for assessment. So this is also being done nowadays due to coronavirus. Okay, now closing this awareness session here. The goal of the ISO 45001 standard is the reduction of occupational injuries and diseases, including the promotion and protection of physical and mental health. Again, non-conformity should be viewed as one way to identify the needed improvements. So this was the final note from me. Thank you for attending this